So, episode 3 of the Security Tapes. We've got Reuben Athaide here from Standard Chartered Bank, and we are talking about Shift, Secure, Innovate, building security that moves with the threat. I'm Adam. We have Vin with us as well.
Hello, everybody.
So, Reuben, tell us about how you got into security, what your background is. How do we get here?
Yeah, sure. Hey, Adam. Hey, Vin. Good to chat again. Honestly, I did not set out to work in security, but looking back, I guess every step that I've taken kind of led me here. So I started out as in banking as a trader. It was intense, fast-paced, high-pressure, real-time decisions, and that really shaped me in how I look at risk, trust, and making decisions quickly and with conviction, because you don't have time to blink. After that, I shifted into building trading platforms and leading large-scale technology and operations transformations, things like post-acquisition integrations, system overhauls, and later setting up DevOps culture, as well as a central DevOps pipeline and cloud strategy. Security wasn't always in my job title, but it was always part of what I was thinking about. Whether I was building trading systems or enabling business change, I was constantly asking myself, is it stable? Is it safe? Will it scale without breaking? Eventually one of the turning points was when it came around to building that central DevOps pipeline. We had to embed security into the core of how we built and shipped software. It couldn't be an afterthought. This is when I really started seeing security as not a blocker, but as an enabler. And I think when it's done right, it helps you move faster and with confidence. So when the opportunity finally came around to formally move into cybersecurity, I just felt like that was the next chapter of what I'd already been doing. At its core, security is not just about protecting, it's about protecting trust. It's also about helping the business take smart risks, innovate safely, and operate and be resilient, right? So, and that all of those things just resonated with me with all the stuff that I've done previously from trading to building trading systems. So at the moment, what I'm doing is I'm leading security innovation and application security, as well as assurance for a financial services organization, right? So my role is about making sure that our security practices keep pace with the business and the evolving threat landscape. There's a lot of focus on secure by default. It's not just also about building walls and putting up roadblocks, but rather enabling change, building trust with the various development teams across the organization, and making sure that security moves as fast as everything else around it. So yeah, I mean, it's not something that I aspired to doing from the beginning, but have ended up here with all the other stuff that I've done along the way.
That's really cool. And it sounds like it's a really I think it's fair to say quite an unusual route into security, all coming from like banking, hardcore trading. I don't feel like there's probably that many people who sort of come in through that route. So that's super cool. So in your sort of day to day, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like you've because you've had a bit of a background in sort of almost the dev pipeline. What's it been like almost having sort of learned security, I guess in a senior role? You've not come up from being like an in the trenches developer or a system administrator. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if you've been sort of down in the trenches writing code or anything like that, but it sounds like you've almost had to pick it up at a later stage in your career.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing more. I mean, I have been on the app side for the longest time, but it started off with a little bit of writing code, but not a lot. But it was a little bit of that, doing analysis, business analysis, testing, and then a lot of project management. And that's kind of what kicked off more into the technology side of things, and really bridging that gap between the business and technology, which is what, kind of got things going. But in doing all of that and building building trading platforms, especially, there's not a lot of leeway for things to be down, right? So that's why, I mean, you look at all aspects, the functional aspects, the non-functional aspects, the security aspects. Like I said, like you got to make sure that it runs, it doesn't break, and it scales. So I picked up fast. So I mean, so yeah, I have been very focused on learning and development, and I felt, and you just see the journey that I've taken. I think it's been a lot about kind of reinventing yourself and try and always being adapting and looking to do the next thing and change, right? And that's what I've been about. In the role, and just coming back to your question, the day-to-day really is it's always a combination of alignment, on the control side, as well as the teams, execution and escalation. That's it's a balancing act across these three, right? So we have a lot of things to do with cross-functional teams, reliance on cross-functional teams. So a lot of time goes in cross-functional meetings related to risk reviews, control discussions, and governance updates, right? And I stay close to the team through, stand-ups. I've always been a great believer in Agile. And even though like part of the team is technical and part of the team is operational, I still like doing, stand-ups to understand what's going on the ground and go from there. And then plenty of like stakeholder connects, right? Also I think one of the things that we always should be doing is hearing, the voice of the customer, or making sure that what we're doing, how we're operating things, it's working and it resonates. So those are some of the things, and then the rest of the time is split between driving shift left initiatives, reviewing assurance findings, and addressing any escalations that come up, as well as exploring ways to automate and streamline, right? So constantly looking at that. I also keep a pulse on the industry, on industry trends. You look at what new tools are out there, what are the emerging threats, and with the innovation lens, looking at what's the next thing on the security horizon that we need to be prepared for, because security is as much about anticipation as it is about reaction.
Sure.
And somewhere in between all of this, and mostly at the end of the day, is trying to have some thinking time to figure out, how do we strategize and go forward.
Nice. So actually, I've got a question sort of off the back of that, and it's probably really, really basic. But when you talk about sort of cross-functional teams, presumably you've got lots of different departments in play, and I imagine it's a bit of a task getting them all to talk to one another. But perhaps you can talk about what you mean by cross-functional and what that means in practice, because there's so many buzzwords in security, and sometimes I feel like I just need to sort of bring it almost right back to the plain English to be absolutely crystal clear. We all understand what we're talking about, right?
Sure. There's different aspects of that cross-functional. So basically, even within security, the way we execute, obviously we have various services, like you'd have identity access management, data protection, network security, just to name a few. And I could go on, but when we said that our focus is on secure by default, we're looking at the assurance across all of these areas, but then you have to connect with each one of those control owners or service areas to make sure that when there's a change in a standard, or when there's something that comes up that is going through the review process that might require their expertise, that they're engaged, right? So so there's that aspect of it. Then there's also projects that we do, and projects that we do, security might, and being part of a large enterprise, the ownership of things is shared across the enterprise, right? Security owns some security tools, but the CI/CD pipeline, if you will, is central. It's part of the DevOps team. It's run by technology. So there's that integration of the security tooling into the DevOps pipeline, so that developers don't have to go somewhere else to do security. It's all embedded in the ecosystem where they're working. So there's working with that team to align on priorities and what are we focused on next in that whole shift left and automate segment. And then obviously doing projects, you have chapters of Scrum Masters and BAs and coordinating all of those things and maybe dependencies on cloud. So there are dependencies across various domains within Tech and Ops, and then there are dependencies to manage in cross-functional teams across the different services or controls that you have within security.
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, one of the things that fascinates me about your role, Reuben, is that, so bear in mind that one of the big things we're trying to achieve with the podcast is we're speaking to a range of people, lots of different size organizations and different positions on that security maturity curve, if you will. And it would be interesting for them to hear you talk about the things you're talking about. And I know one of the things you wanted to touch on was security culture. And I think of my background, and I've worked in general in relatively small companies. And then I went on to set up my own company, which was a relatively small security boutique. We grew from 3 people to 30 people. And that was difficult to get any kind of cultural change, security or otherwise, with a small team. I then worked at a £400 million company, 2,500 people, still compared to your company, tiny, and your organisation. And I suppose the question is, from a security culture viewpoint, did you feel you had a lot to change when you started, or has it been minor things? And how do you affect change in such a big enterprise? It fascinates me to think how you can actually get that done,
Yeah, it's not easy. When I start off, I mean, it's been a few years. Like when I did the initial DevOps pipeline and implemented the DevOps culture, that was really totally greenfield, and it was it was new to a lot, right? It's not that there weren't some teams doing automation in different parts of the organization. There was, but bringing it all together and explaining to everyone the value of being on a central pipeline in that first iteration. I mean, the bank's come a long way, and now we've got it even a lot better in the second iteration. But that first iteration, just getting that off the ground, there was a lot to do there. And that's when like the security part of it. Yes, there was it was known that they had to do it, but it was more from an aspect of just like getting a box tick done, that the security thing had to be done. They had to review it, then I get it back. So getting the whole DevSecOps and bringing security as part of the whole DevOps pipeline, that made a huge difference, right? And then development teams could see what's the value in it for them. That if we do these checks and they get completed, I don't need to go somewhere else to do something else. I will be able to I'll be able to go live in production with my software a lot quicker. So that's that was the that's what helped get them that way, right? So I think overall, to get to that healthy security culture, yes, there has been a few things that we've had to do. It wasn't a completely a given, right? But developers are very I mean, you get 2 types. You get developers that are either bricklayers or cathedral builders. The bricklayers just want to do something and carry on, and they're not really looking at the big picture. The cathedral ones want to see their finished product, and they're very proud of it, and they don't want to know that there's any defects in it. So nobody wants to be told that they got a bunch of defects in their product, right? So they will be very keen to help fix that, and especially when they see that they can get that cathedral up and running a lot quicker than before. So So the whole automation side of it really helped. Also learning. I mean, you'd be amazed, like a lot of people are keen to learn and do new things, right? So kind of tying in an ASPM, like an application security posture management, shows them what are the defects in their product with something that's learning and gives them targeted learning. You don't want to like waste time doing all sorts of stuff, but they want to do targeted stuff. So targeted learning for the defects that they have, that kind of resonates with them, and they're appreciative of it, and they definitely want to take it up. And then finally, seeing that security is opening up to taking a risk-based approach, and like looking at what is actually just exploitable, or looking at asset context as well to determine those things. What truly matters kind of helps them pick up on it. So these are things that are not just from a development side that had to be uplifted for security to be embedded, but also security had to come to the understanding, right? I think security historically has been very like operations focused perhaps, or also been a lot about like we've got to put those hard blocking guardrails in place, right? And make sure that we're checking everything. We do have to check everything, but at the same time, I think the mindset there too needed to change to be more about enabling. So you have the right guardrails in place and you enable, and then no one tries to bypass and avoid that central pipeline, right?
So I feel like this is absolutely getting into the meat of the discussion now, and it's something that I've certainly come across a lot in my work as a pen tester and running a pen testing provider, is this whole idea of shifting left and what that actually looks like in practice. Because traditionally, as a tester, when people are bringing me in, it's quite often almost at the end of the process. The application's already built, the infrastructure's already set up. It's all wonderful until it's not. But quite often, security hasn't been considered at that point. It's almost like a bolt-on. And I think the thing that I always think is a massive challenge is how do you reconcile sort of almost the two state of affairs? So when you're developing it, right, as you say, building the cathedral.
Yeah.
I'm loving the analogy. I'm gonna steal it. But you don't know what the finished thing necessarily looks like or how it's going to play out in practice. You can build in as much security as possible, but there are going to be parts of it that you can't necessarily account for at the start of the process. So as someone who very much owns the process and has been trying to push it as far back into the development process as possible, how do you make sure security is accounted for at each part of the process, not only at the very start, but as new things are added in? How do you keep layering it in?
Yeah, so the way that you do that, and what actually we've tried to do, is having security champions in each of the product groups. So when you have a security champion in each of the product groups, I mean, they're not there to just block to block the teams, but they're there to participate as part of the sprint. They are part of that team. They're part of the product team. They're participating in the sprint. They're able to provide those non-functional security requirements at an early stage. So, say, to your point of, you don't know how things are going to pan out at the end. And you'd also be, you don't build the whole application or the whole platform all at once. They might be doing it in phases. So maybe phase one doesn't require maybe phase one is internal and you don't need to encrypt everything, right? At that point, but then you need to maybe for phase two when you're going external or something, just using that as an example. So having a security champion within the product domain, that they're able to, take that, approach of iterative, what needs to go into this release, what's in the next, based on the size and scope of the release, or what are the things that go in there, right? So the security champion is pretty helpful for all of that. And it doesn't have to be bottleneck with a central team to do that assurance, right? They can do the periodic checks and make sure that things are aligned with expectations of secure by default, or secure by design, but then, hand it off to the security champions to do the day-to-day and be part of it. So that's one thing. The other thing is, by having all these security controls embedded into the pipeline and having governed templates where you kind of run the various tests, be it SAST or DAST or SEA, etc., automatically based on the scope and what's required, you're able to advise development teams on the far left when they do that first run of any breaks that they're going to have, right? So any non-compliance they're going to have because you got X number of vulnerabilities or something else not yet done in their application security, you're able to tell them in advance. And what we found is when you're able to tell them in advance, they're able to fix a big chunk of it, like 34% of it, really upfront, because they know about it early and it's not at the end. So they have enough of time before they go live to do it. And there's a very small bit of it, which could be because a fix is not available, or there's a vendor dependency and they're going to do something in another quarter. They could be something that they will put in a following release. But most of it they can get up front if they know about it, right? So it reduces friction, and it's a big win to get this done. So those are the bits, like the security champion, as well as having things up front on the left, advising them about it in the pipeline is what is useful. And the other thing that I would say is on the onboarding side. Now, being a large organization and not really, we like to say that we're software focused, but we are a bank, right, or a financial institution. And in financial institutions, you tend to also buy a lot of software, and it's knowing what are the security expectations, right? What protocols would integrate with things around IAM, or what is the data protection expectation? So knowing these things up front means you'd have that whole storefront approach, if you will, of what is expected from security. You can then build it in, or you can make sure that those things are available in whatever product you are considering to buy.
That's great. I tell you what I find very interesting is the security champion piece, because again, a big thing about the podcast, as you see as we get further into the series, is that we've got some guests coming on. There's one young man who's going to join us, and he's finished his apprenticeship. He's currently not got a role, and he's looking what he wants to do next, and it is in security, and he's really keen to get involved. And already from the people we've spoken with, we've seen some people come the traditional route into security. Yourself, you've explained your background's a unique way of getting in, and there's a few people like that. And it's fascinating and hopefully inspiring to anybody watching to see that security is not ring fenced. People can jump in. And it's great to see that one of the ways you're spreading the message, as it were, and doing the job is to get security champions. How do you go about doing that? How do you find your champions in your different departments? Do they jump out at you? Do you spot them? How does it work?
It's a bit of a combination. Like we did put together some criteria of what they need to know or to have in skills to be able to do that, and one of it is also having maybe worked on that product, having done some of the coding or the QA, and kind of having a bit of an inclination towards security. But another thing that I'm trying to do as well is have levels in that security champion. So almost like like if you've heard of the distinguished engineer pathway. So having something like a pathway where like you had to do a few courses, and that allowed you to do the let's just say the lower level severity applications. But as you you did some more training, and as you had more experience being a security champion, you'd be able to do some of the higher severity level applications, right? So have it sort of graded in a pathway to get there. And ideally, it would be good to tie that up with something from the HR side where you get some benefits out of going down this pathway and extending yourself from being, like, let's just say level 1 to level 3 or 4, right? So that there's something in it for you as well as a security champion. That's one thing. The other thing is we also try to create a community of security champions within domains. So they had a means of sharing, sharing their day-to-day, sharing their experiences with being part of the security champion in a product line with others as well. So that way, you are reusing and sharing what's working, what's not working, and not just you don't find yourself just alone, right? So I think all of that, and the fact that people's interests change over time, roles evolve. We talk about automation, and there's plenty of automation and changes in platforms as well. So there are developers that could find that hey, things might be changing on the platform they're working on, so they want to look at something different, and security could be something different, right? So I think it's partially with the security team to kind of make it enticing and show how there's how interesting or valuable security could be, and then it's also a part on the development side, just curiosity from developers to try to, or QA people to try to want to do something different.
Fantastic. And I've got to say, I really like that approach. And again, on our second podcast, which hopefully you get time to see, Reuben, as that comes out, our guest there was talking about when they joined their organization, using the particular circumstance which comes out in the podcast to not just solve a current issue, but look at baking in security going forward. And it just feels like, rather than looking at it as sort of almost one-dimensionally, you're building in that 3 dimensions to it, where it's a growing thing, but not just growing, it's literally growing each member of the team and giving them that pathway forward. I mean, that's just fantastic. I mean, does that build into your longer-term plan in terms of continually growing the knowledge of the team and experience of the team?
Yeah, I think so. In the long term, that's what we like to do. Right now, it's just probably in its infancy. We have a few security champions in the different domains, but then building that, and then just having a pathway for them, similar to how you have a distinguished engineer, would be a really good thing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of going to take it back to the technical side of things, because that's what I do. Hacker's going to hack and all of that. And I think with the almost going back to shifting left and keeping pace with just the sheer amount of vulnerabilities, but if you're standing up new applications, you've got supporting infrastructure, you've got new servers going up, you've got new containers, you've got databases attached to all of these things, you've got new infrastructure, perhaps just regular service infrastructure to support all the different employees or customer bases that might be associated with those applications, and it turns into a real sprawl. And this is something that I do a lot of work with Trethtec, because we've very much gone down the continuous security testing route, trying to move away from point in time stuff, because I think a lot of people are really struggling with just the sheer volume of applications and services that they have to feel that they are responsible for. And I'm interested in how you deal with that. How do you as a massive organization, how do you deal with not only the applications, but all the supporting infrastructure and all the supporting services.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of moving parts for sure, right? And there's a lot to keep track of, and to make sure that you've got the visibility across these moving parts, and the ever evolving threat landscape. You need to implement a few key things, right? So I think you need to have an external attack surface management. You need to set that up so that you have the ability to discover, catalog everything that's externally facing, every asset that's externally facing on the internet. And then we talked about like making sure you're fixing the right thing, right? So that's where your continuous security and continuous exposure management comes into play. And with the continuous exposure management, it's about looking at not only simulating attack paths, but also looking at fixing the right stuff based on the asset, a lot of internal asset context and the exploitability risks, right? So what is that? What is the exposure path, and what do you fix then? And then you need to have all this come together in that having good visualization across everything, right? So you'd have cloud, you have on-prem, you have SaaS. I mean, I think there's a lot of SaaS usage, and not a lot in the past has been going on around keeping track of that. But I think just in general in the industry, but I think a lot more focus needs to be there on keeping track of the SaaS usage. Where is your data? Where are those SaaS products being hosted and run, right? So just operationalizing that third-party risk with continuously assessing the vendor posture is also needed. So all these things together, because I mean security is multiplayer sport as well as it's layered, right? So it's having all that layering in place of your external attack surface, continuous exposure management, continuous security in the pipeline as well, and that visualization, and then SaaS vendor posture management, putting it all together, and then you'd have a better sense of what's out there and what's going on.
Absolutely, and it's such a mindset shift, right? This
it is.
idea of, I think everyone's been so locked into finding CVEs, like is everything patched? Is everything up to date? And people don't necessarily think, especially as everyone's got all their data spread across various different services, whether it's something as complex as AWS or Azure in the cloud, where they've got lots of different systems and services and containers and all manner of things stood up, but also basic stuff that you need to run a company, like your customer relationship management database. You've got all your customers, all your suppliers living in there, perhaps your HR functions, all your payroll, all these things that can be really useful to an attacker, and yet people don't think of as part of their attack surface. And one of the things that we often do when we're building out scopes and we're building out, as you talked about, thinking about these routes through, people quite often ignoring big things like what happens if your email provider gets compromised. Say someone gets phished, so far so standard. But one of the things we often find when we're testing full attack paths and routes is we'll get into the email and we'll harvest passwords for various software as a service, because God knows they end up in email, they just do. And then you're able to move laterally to things like customer relationship management, to cloud environments, even accounting software, and then suddenly the blast radius is much bigger, and we've not even touched web servers, databases, sort of all the traditional things people think of when it's like, oh, we need to secure that. So it can be such a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think observability is a big part of that. Apart from having all those all the things that we talked about plugged in place, observability is a big thing. But like and it's not just tooling, right? And I think if we look at what we've been talking about for the last little while on the podcast, we talked about developers, we talked about automation, and we talked about shifting left and everything. I think the one commonality with all of these things is that culture. It often gets forgotten, right? Because everyone gets carried away with implementing some new tool or thinking you put it in. So it's the culture and also adoption and enablement. Like you can do the exposure management and you can implement continuous security and all that sort of stuff, but if you haven't focused enough on how will it be adopted and enabling teams to use this or register whatever they got to do to be able to have their products picked up and be available in observability, then it's not going to happen, right?
Yeah, makes sense. And clearly with your role, Reuben, you've got to be focused on certain parameters in certain places. But to do that, you need to be a really good security generalist as well and be aware of what's happening all over. And just to benefit some of the people who've not maybe gone as far down the road as you, as far down your path, and people who are in smaller organizations, a bit low down the curve, if you were to say from their perspective, what do you feel is one of the main issues facing people at the moment, and what advice would you give to someone lower down that curve in terms of dealing with that big threat at the moment? I know it's difficult to nail one thing, but I just think if there's something that stands out to you from a generalist viewpoint.
Yeah, so I think there are a few things along the lines of observability. It's that visibility across evolving threat landscape and understanding the exposure in real time. That's one of the challenges that everybody has, because you have multi-cloud workloads, SaaS, API containers, and you got to understand where all this is. The next thing is that it is a challenge is prioritization and taking a pragmatic risk-based approach to prioritization with all the relevant data points based on external attack surface management, internal asset context, and exploitability. And then there's the ability to act fast and at scale with all of this, right? It's not just having that information, it's being able to act. And that depends on having a CI/CD pipeline, right? So through a pipeline, like we've discussed, or through orchestration. And another important element, really, and the challenge for anybody getting into this or anybody managing things around us, is that human talent. Having the right talent to be able to augment the tooling and the various things that are coming out there, even AI coming in slowly, being able to have the human talent to be able to augment that and be able to make the best out of it, right? So a lot of moving parts, and these are the things that probably are challenges that anybody coming in right now would have to contend with and work with. But ultimately, in dealing with all of this, they would help to build something that's more resilient, secure, and the target would be having operations that can scale.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes perfect sense. And then just a question I always like to ask, slightly different, but I think when we've been in security a while, there's certain stories you've kind of come across or tales that you can tell. I mean, what would you say is your favorite story you've got to tell about security? It might have happened to somebody else, or it might have happened to you. What's your favorite lesson tale, if you've got one?
Let's go on. So, favorite story. I was trying to trying to think about. There are a lot of stories that we've had to contend with, but I think probably I do find that, and it's not just about security, but I like seeing things come to fruition. And with the background I've had, building trading systems has always been about trying to put developers in pole position and letting them go as fast as they need to go. So I guess my favorite story has been with a lot of the shift left that we've been able to do with integrating security controls, security champions, giving them early warnings on things, being able to see the satisfaction of developers being able to go fast, get to where they want to go, get that cathedral up and running has been the story. That's been the joy.
That's good to hear.
Awesome. So I'm going to actually take us back almost into the sort of the main body, because I've got one last question which we haven't touched on, but we've got a little time left to play, and that's the AI side of things. And I feel like it's almost a bit controversial now. You've got one group of people who are sort of very, very anti-AI and are sort of almost resisting it, and then there's the massive sort of AI hype train where it's gonna change everything, and if you're not on board with it, you're going to get left behind. And it's the truth is obviously probably somewhere in the middle. So it would be really interesting to sort of hear what your thoughts are on AI and how you handle it. And obviously it's got massive security implications. And I've obviously got my feelings from an attacker point of view, but I'd love to hear what that means for your long-term plans as a decision maker, really.
Sure. I think there's I mean, it's not just about the attacking, but also there's value in leveraging it, right? So probably focus on that first. So we've talked about the fact that there are, there's an enormous amount of like CVEs and that come up every day, right? And it's almost, it's very difficult to be on top of all of that. And we sometimes spend quite a bit of time on how to prioritize it. But being able to leverage a model that could help you fix some of that stuff automatically would be magic, right? So, and that is something that we're playing around with it, and something that can help look at, you got these CWEs, here's a fix for them, or here's some that are false positive, don't have to bother about that. So that's helpful. So that's one thing. I mean, you've done some work with pen testers and the like, and I'm pretty sure you'd agree with me that when it comes to the technical aspect of pen testing or anything like that, for sure they can do it quickly. They can do a great job because that's what they like to, and that's easy, right? The part that's probably more difficult or takes more time is the report writing, because you need to write a report to kind of say, hey, this is what I found. These are the key things, and that's something that's very easy these days that a model can help you with, and pull that together. So there are more use cases, but there are plenty of areas where it's beneficial and you want to be able to leverage it. But of course, when you have any emerging technology, there's always someone that's going to try to exploit it, right? And try to use it for the wrong purposes. And there are some risks. But I don't think it's like completely you don't have to like reinvent the wheel to deal with those risks, because we deal with those risks quite a bit in the regular run of play, right? So you naturally do things by giving people least privilege. You have identity access management in place. Usually you're going to have data protection of encryption and making sure that only based on roles or based on whatever criteria you have as to who has access to the data and who does not. So those things don't change. You still have all those guardrails in place. You probably also have guardrails of what open source you're allowed to bring into an organization and how you bring it in. And you can treat models the same as you treat open source, where you have those defined defined pathways of how you bring something in, what checks get done on it before it gets, GA, if you will, for general usage in the organization. So yes, there are challenges out there, but if you get the basics right that you use for other technologies, then there isn't any reason why you cannot leverage the best out of AI to be able to help with the good side of things.
Absolutely, and that's really interesting, and I would say perhaps sort of an uncommonly positive and pragmatic sort of take on it. And I think one of the things that I often think about is one of the areas where the AI really shines, if you take a little time to prepare it and build it into your workflows, because that's really what we're talking about here, is with all the shifting left, is building workflows and systems.
Yep.
is building some context into it. You're not just using it as a sort of a bare large language model. You're giving it some context to your environment, your applications, your use case for it, that you can use to get the best out of it, right?
Yes, for sure.
Awesome. So I think that is really everything we were going to cover. I feel like we could go on for absolutely days with half this stuff, and we've had a super light touch on all the DevOps stuff. I know that's something you're particularly keen on and can talk super fluently on. And I know I could absolutely go down the AI rabbit hole. So I think let's wrap it up there. I'm sure we would love to have you back at another time, because it's been awesome chatting. Thanks for joining us. Where can people connect with you if they want to get in touch, talk more about security, learn from your experiences? That's really what this podcast is all about. Where can people get in touch with you?
LinkedIn works. I mean, that's easy to get hold of me through there. I love catching up and exchanging notes and ideas, because it's you always learn from meeting with different people and swapping notes on things. So yeah, you just reach out on LinkedIn. Easy to connect, and or email, and it's also on there, and it'd be great to have a chat with whoever. Yeah, and thanks. It's been great chatting with you guys, Adam and Win. I look forward to doing it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've certainly plans to do some roundtable style events, Reuben, and we'd love to have you along to them. We're even looking at a physical get together, a bit more of a challenge for you, but you would be invited over to London to come and join us and get to meet
sure.
people. But yeah, but it is all about building that network, and I'm sure that today that you have done at least two things. One is inspire people who are thinking of getting into our world, and the other is there's a ton of tips in there that will help other people in different places on that curve. So thank you very much for your time. It's been really appreciated.
Pleasure. Thank you.